Finance Wallah. So I come from finance. I've been working with banks, central banks, policy making my early years and small one in Eastern Europe. Population less than Anderi. Just to be scale.
That's interesting. What essentially inspired you to take that plunge, right? You had a really great corporate job and you're doing super well. So why do a startup? Why build something of your own?
Something meaningful in my life, and I wanted to positively impact as many people as I could at scale, and just feel fulfilled also with the work that I was doing. And that was the last time I wore a tie.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se. This is your host Shreyas Jani, and today we have with us Mr. Beka, founder of Kernal Finance. Hey Beka, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure having you here.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Indeed. So Kernal Finance is essentially a startup that is trying to revolutionize the MSME ecosystem in India. They have a unique accounting and expense management software on which they are trying to embed multiple financial products so as to make it available for the entire MSME segment of India. Without further ado, let's hand it over to Mr. Beka and hear it from the man himself. Over to you, Mr. Beka. Would love to hear a bit about yourself and Kernal Finance.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. Yeah, so I'll start with a bit of perspective about myself.
Sure.
Finance Wallah. So I come from finance. I've been working with banks, central banks, policy making in my early years, and then I basically switched to consulting. I did a bunch of consulting, mostly working with small businesses because I come from Georgia, so one in Eastern Europe, population less than Anderi, actually, just to give it
Interesting.
So basically, the digitization of tax system happened in Georgia back in 2010, and during my consulting, I've been helping small businesses to digitize, to set their that was my core area of expertise. And then 2017, startup bug beat me. My first startup, Person Burn, really dear to my heart, and that was amazing experience, amazing learning phase. So I started Kernel back in 2020 when I was small side project, solve my own problems when I was working as a CFO in a private equity firm, managing the back side of all the subsidiaries in terms of finance, administration, HR, all this. Yeah, now you know what the Kernel. So from day one, the idea has been and mission has been to build this kind of bridge between the business side and the accounting side. And this comes is very on size and forms, right? Depending on the size of the business, depending on the operations, depending on the inflation, etc. Tax system, like whatnot. So it started in Georgia, but again, Georgia is a really small market, so we started in outward, especially when we got in. That was back in end of 2020. And India generally has been, I've had a great passion for India. The macros are amazing. Apart from the macros, I believe about the development, the pace with which India is developing. India is going to become the next global superpower much faster than anybody anticipates. And I see that India's stock plays a huge role here. But for all of that work, there are basically two things. A couple of things need to happen, basically. So, but that went down to digitization of the small businesses, because especially in our target customer segment, these are mostly pen and paper people who've been using pen and paper running legacy businesses, and mobile phone is their only access to internet and to the wider world.
Indeed.
And two important things here are that they need, on one hand, to have access to capital, to cheap formal capital, and for that they need to run their businesses digitally. Another one part, I think, which is really important, again, it's painful always, but it's necessary reform. because for India to really achieve its destiny of becoming the next global superpower, a lot needs to be invested in infrastructure, education, healthcare.
True.
That needs to be done with the taxpayers' money. Only 4% of Indians pay taxes, direct taxes. Like, this is mind-blowing for me. So the only way to collect this tax revenue is indirect taxes, which is GST. So we've identified that, and we realized that with combination of all those three, we could really make huge impact at huge scale. And that was the reason why we decided to. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that. But basically what we do is we help those pen and paper guys to digitize, comply with the tax requirements that are getting, GST is getting stricter by the day, and get their hands on the cheap capital, basically to boost their business and grow their business and spend and waste as little time on this boring paperwork as possible. So that's what we're up to.
Awesome. No, I think this sounds like a super interesting journey. From Georgia, before that, in your consulting days, working with multiple corporates, taking the plunge, diving into startup, crashing and burning in the first startup, and then now again, building Kernal Finance, and I think moving on to multiple markets. I think that's a great choice. And then, I mean, ultimately, what really kind of peaked out to me is the fact that you have a really deep understanding of all the ecosystem that you're working with, and I think it'll be really exciting to talk with you and understand. So having said that, right, interesting question really comes up in my mind is what essentially inspired you to take that plunge, right? You had a really great corporate job and you're doing super well. So why do a startup? Why build something of your own? What was it that inspired you?
So especially in the early days, I was doing really well in my banking job, especially going into the central banking policy making. Like, that was thing of a status, apart from the good salary, travel with, business class to different countries, attending those fancy conferences, all of that. But then I switched to commercial banking, and I was mostly working on the back side of things. So basically managing the risk for the bank rather than, kind of empowering the customers.
Got it.
And one day, that had been on my mind like for a while. It didn't happen in a day, but one day I woke up and I made a firm decision that I wanted to do something meaningful in my life, and I wanted to positively impact as many people as I could at scale, and just feel fulfilled also with the work that I was doing. And that was the last time I wore a tie. I quit my job basically, and coming from banking, the work also got out, and Georgia is a small ecosystem, so not viable for me to get another banking job, and that was where my all strongest connections were. And I just joined my home university, so to say, where I come from, which I graduated, raised a small funding from European Union grant to set up a small startup incubator for the students. That was kind of my thing that I was doing. And in parallel, me and my friends started, this was more like a social thing rather than a startup, educating people about blockchain. It was like 2017 type. So people were making a lot of uninformed decisions in terms of investments. So that was what I was doing, like just to enjoy and just to find meaning into the work that I was doing. And out of that was born my first startup. Actually, it was blockchain related.
Okay.
And again, like, it was born out of the need that we actually had. So that didn't work out. Generally, that was the time when I realized that I kind of want to be the owner of my destiny, and I want to be able to make the impact and feel fulfilled with whatever work I do. So,
true. No, also, I think that's really inspiring. Having said that, right, I'm sure, I think you got into entrepreneurship, I think around 4.5 years back. And in your journey till now, right, what has been the most humbling moment for you that kind of, made you challenge everything that you know till now?
Oh, Yeah, that's a hard question. So I would say the moment when that was in my first startup. Actually, that was like again amazing learning, because that was my first interaction of doing something all completely on my own as the founder. Was we went we went at some point when we were out of cash. And I had a really small team beside me. And the team, like I announced to them, I told to them that, we are kind of at the end of the journey. And the team voluntarily decided to come along with me, and we worked basically 6 months without getting any penny for that. And I didn't ever push anybody for that, just for the enjoyment. And then, like, admitting also to ourselves that, this journey was over, but that would lay the ground for our future journeys. That was, I think, one of the memorable moments. Mixture of pride, bad emotions, failure, all of those things together. But I think talking to the team and saying those things, like literally changed, and seeing their support and their passion for what they did, I think that was the thing that changed my life. And the lessons I learned then I'm trying my best to utilize here and make more mistakes here and learn more.
Of course. No, so I think one thing that really comes to my mind is, I mean, for anyone, right? It's very difficult to identify when to close down a startup, because as an entrepreneur, I think startup is akin to your own kid, right? So how do you figure out the moment when you know that this is over, it's done, I mean, we should shut this down? So what was that moment for you? How did you realize?
So I think any entrepreneur failure or any startup's failure happens between the years. So it's just in the mind. So it can be exactly the same state of the business of the entire world, but your mindset might change. So I believe that the day a founder firmly believes, because you have doubts every day that, am I going to fail? And is this going to work out? Like those doubts you have every day because of the huge challenges. But the day the founding team basically decide that, make the decision for themselves that this is not going to work out, in terms of emotion, I would say that is the day when the journey is over, and we need to be grateful for the opportunity to have had that journey and embrace the new one.
I think very well said. It's most of the time it's in the person's mind, right? I think I completely agree with you. When you feel that you're not able to take it, or you're not able to take it that forward, is when you realize that the closure has to be, closer is due, basically.
When you feel more 100% committed, I would say.
Right. No, perfect. I think that is something that a lot of founders have asked me over a period of time. How do you shut down a startup? When do you shut down a startup, right? And there is no right answer to it. It's completely inside that person's mind, and they have to figure that out themselves. I think it's one introspection that needs to be done. Having said that, right, I mean, being a startup founder is a really tough job. I mean, I've seen a lot of people leave their cushy corporate jobs and jump into entrepreneurship, but it's most of the time they end up getting a reality hit. Yeah, this is going to be a lot more tougher than I expected. It's going to be a lot more stressful. Although you do become master of your own destiny, but then you also become accountable for everything that's happening to you, and you can't blame anyone else. So that's like a double-edged sword. But this also brings in a lot of stresses, emotional, physical, mental, for the founder. So being a founder, I think, and having gone through one startup and now you're building one more, what I was trying to say is essentially, how do you keep sane given so much emotional, mental, and physical stress that comes to you as a founder of a startup?
So I struggled a lot with that, because the amounts of stress is just unimaginable. And farther you go, the harder it gets. There's no point to time until you exit when it gets easier. Every day it goes harder, the challenges are bigger, pressure is higher, all those. So what really helped me is maintaining a routine. So there are a few things to that. So I think that celebrating small wins is extremely important, no matter how small, like celebrating those. Another one is there are days then when you feel down, and you just need to accept that if you don't have, like, at least once a month, you need to give yourself that one day of break. If you're able to give yourself that break once a week, that's amazing. But you need to find the time to, just on a working day, on a Monday morning, having many meetings once a month. If you feel that you just don't have the power, it's better to, just back out for that day. I believe that will give you more strength in the future days going forward, because you're playing it's a marathon, not a sprint at the end of the day, even though you need to be running really, really fast. But
True.
But I think that overall, what is maintaining the routine. So I believe that's extremely, extremely important. For me, the routine has been like, it's over a year now, daily, a mild exercise in the morning. So I don't go to the gym, but just mild stretch, something like that. I take this therapy of cold showers. So every morning I have cold, like, I don't remember how it's called actually in English, but you take very hot, very cold, very hot, very cold, and you're switching the temperatures of the water.
That's interesting.
And it's like, initially it's not pleasant, but that's amazing for your nerve system generally and against fighting stress. And meditating daily, at least, 10, 15, 5, 3 minutes, like whatever, just finding that space during the day to just sit still and feel yourself. So that has worked amazing for me. But again, like, different things work for different people, but I believe that maintaining the routine that works for you specifically, I think that's extremely important.
No, indeed, I think I completely agree with you on the part of maintaining a routine. Otherwise, you kind of get lost in the swamp of everything, and you just get lost. I mean, it becomes very difficult to keep a track of things, personal and professional as well. So I think very well said. Having said that, right, entrepreneurship is a journey which has no handbook as such. There is no playbook or pre-written rules that you need to follow to be successful. So it's imperative that every founder will make mistakes. Whether they care to admit it or not is a different story. So what has been one of the biggest mistakes that you have ever made, and how did you kind of get over it?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that one single mistake, but all the big mistakes I've made, the mistake has always been wishful thinking. Because when things are going hard and there's this, chance that things are going to turn good, you just allow yourself to kind of relax and dream, which is by itself not that bad. But all the hardest times that I've had and that the company has had has been due to that wishful thinking. Whether that's on the investment side, whether that's working with the partners, employees, any stakeholder, anything. If you catch yourself in wishful thinking, like, you just need to realize that you're making a big mistake and this is going to put you in a bad situation. And I think that attitude I made that mistake multiple times, and now I'm also careful with that. So, you need to embrace those mistakes, obviously. But if you do move into wishful thinking that, okay, this investor committed, he said he's investing, this is, done. That's wishful thinking. It's not done until the cash hit the bank. Yeah, you're closing a corporate deal, like, they're happy, they want to do it. Okay, I'm going to relax because it's done. It's never done until it's done, right? So, I mean, all with wishful thinking, like, that attitude has been, I would say, the biggest mistake. And turning it around, sometimes I still get tempted into it, but, I learned to recognize the patterns of wishful thinking and catching myself and dragging back to reality, so to say.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? And wishful thinking, although is something that is really enticing when you are about to close that big deal or about to be near the finish line, right? And I mean, I'm pretty sure we have seen that. I don't know what's the source of that, but there's a meme wherein a guy is running towards the finish line and there is no one near him, so he kind of slows down and then someone overtakes him and gets it. So that kind of perfectly summarizes this, I would say. Having said that, right? I think financial resources are one of the biggest constraints for early stage startups, right? Allocating the capital, maintaining the resources, and keeping a watch on the finances that you have and prioritizing things so that you don't burn up too much too fast. So having said that, right, if for example, if you did not have that limitations from day zero of, let's say, building Kernal.Finance, if you had let's say a $1 billion in your account on day one, how would you do things differently?
So I'm a believer in lean approach generally, and that has also probably from the culture that I come from and probably from the experience that I've had. So if we had like unlimited resources, the only difference would be that we would conduct much more experiments and learn much faster. And we would, for example, to the stage where we are right now, we would be at this stage in terms of learning, understanding the market, understanding who the customer is, what the product should be, what the pains we should solve, and how. We would arrive there much faster because we would be able to bet on multiple experiments, right? Once you have limited resources, right, you still need to focus on one each. So other than that, definitely I would not make a huge team or huge overhead. Like, that's not about how much money is behind your back. It's about building a successful and viable business. So if you don't treat the resources you have, how unlimited they might seem, it doesn't matter. If you don't approach with caution and you don't make sure that maybe not today, but at the end of the day, you're earning on every sale you make, or the business is profitable and makes sense, then it never would. So money, what I've learned is money rarely solves any problems. It usually creates more problems. So so that you should solve those things on your own and only invest in whatever is necessary. So if we had unlimited capital, we would just experiment much faster, I would say. Let's do some.
Perfect. I think that was very well put. I don't need to say anything more. Having said that, right, one final question before we end this segment and move on to the next one, right? You have been an entrepreneur for almost half a decade, and before that, I think you have had more than a decade worth of experience in the industry. So what are your top three don'ts for budding entrepreneurs?
Don'ts. Yeah, I already said wishful thinking. So that's one, right, for sure. Another don't, I would say, and it's really, really hard to do, but don't burn yourself out. Because if you burn yourself out, you're not productive, you're not getting to the results, and the pressure is not gonna go off. So just maintain that mental and physical health, no matter how demanding the circumstances, the business, or the times are. So I would say just neglecting personal health and relationships is a big don't. Obviously, you have less time for that, but you need to figure out though. So that's actually one. And I would go back to the previous question. I would say, be really we're talking don'ts, right? So
yes,
don't waste your resources until you are sure that it's gonna have returns. And the return might be learning, it might be some breakthrough in revenue or what business model, whatever, but don't put your resources, nor the time, nor financial resources, nothing, if you're not sure that this is gonna pay back. And again, paying back might not be financial, it might be in terms of knowledge, in terms of network, many different things. So I would say those are the top three for me.
Perfect. I think those are really useful, and I'm sure our budding entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now would be very grateful to you for sharing these. So thank you so much. And with this, I think we'll draw a close to our first segment and move on to the next segment. So stay tuned.